name's BJ Cruse. I'm the chairman of the Eden Local Aboriginal Land Council. I think I've been chairman for maybe 34, 35 years, something like that. Well, this country here, Eden, is a part of what we know as Monaroo country. Some people call that Yuin country, and that traditional boundary goes from the Shellhaven River in Nowra to the north, and to the Snow River that comes out at Orbost in the south, and then west to the Kosciuszko mountain range. And all that is one nation boundary, but within that one nation there are many clans and language groups. So that's why different people know that same country by different names. Our people dope abalone in traditional times, and we lived on the coast during the winter months because of two things. Because it was too cold to go to the Snow Mountain region, which is a part of our food chain migration areas. And so during the cooler months we lived on the coast and we ate seafood. We lived off of seafood. And in the winter months you have the offshore winds, so your seas are calmer. And then during the summer months when the snow melts, we migrated to the Kosciuszko mountain range and we lived off bogon moths. And we hunted and gathered in between those areas. There's probably about 4 or 5 different food groups that we used to go for. We used to go for bogon moths, which was high in protein. And in the sea country species, we got a lot of iodine. Then the hinterlands just off the coast, we lived on nuts and berries, and we got a lot of fibre and a lot of roughage from those sorts of things. And then we migrate a little further west till we get into the plains country, and we lived off kangaroos and emus and those sorts of things, and so we got a lot of protein and iron from those sorts of food groups. Not like a European diet where you have all your food groups within a day or a week. Our people had a particular food group for about 3 months of the year, and so the main identification of that area is either Monaroo people. Some people say Monero, but it's really Monaroo. And the creator of the Monaroo people is Durrumalu, and Durrumalu created Monaroo, Bubbaroo, Gadu, which is people of the mountains and the sea. We call the sea country Gadu, and we call abalone Walkun. We've been diving for abalone for many thousands of years, but when the Europeans come to Australia and put a stop to a lot of our hunting and gathering and a lot of our lifestyle, because private lands was being taken up and fences were put up and became private property where you weren't allowed to go. And so our people weren't able to move about freely as we used to. And under the Aboriginal Protection Board, our lives were regulated. And ultimately we was forced to live another lifestyle and to establish another form of economic base that would fit into this newer system. And so we started to trade our seafood species for currency, and we used that money to substitute our diets and our lifestyle in other areas. And for my own personal family, my dad used to dive for abalone with his father back in the 30s, and they used to dry the abalone out on net and wire racks, and they used to dry them out like dates, and they used to sell them to the Chinese. There's a place up the coast called Borley Point, and my grandfather used to spend that much time there at Borley Point diving for abalone that they nicknamed him Borley. Never had air compressors, and they never even had goggles. And so what used to happen is my grandfather used to walk around in water up to his neck, and he used to feel for the abalone and the lobsters with his feet. And when he'd find them, the kids would swim down and they'd get them. And that's how they used to get the abalone back in the 30s. And then when my dad, he's 85 now, but when he was 16, he went to Torres Strait Islands with Uncle Julep Patton. They went up there, they got a job on a pearl lugger. And they went up and they was diving for pearls. And so my dad dove from when he was 16 till he was 18 years. And in 1962, he got a job in Sydney with the RTA, Roads and Transport Authority. I don't know what it was called in those days, but they built the Gladesville Bridge going across Sydney Harbour. And Dad was a foundation diver. He used to go down and check the foundations as they were building the bridge. And he used to walk back and forwards across Sydney Harbour underwater in a canvas suit with lead boots. And about 1965, 66, we moved to Mystery Bay and we was living in tents at Mystery Bay. There was about 5 or 6 families that was living with us, all Aboriginal people, and some of them was married into non-Aboriginal people, so there was those people there. And we was diving for abalone at Mystery Bay. And we used to sell to a person named Gordon Beaver. He was another diver, but him and his wife used to buy abalone at Bermagui, and then they used to bring them down to Eden. What happened was that a lot of people lost out on their abalone licences that shouldn't have. Because when we was diving for abalone in the 60s, there was no such thing as a licence. What you had was a fishing licence, and it got stamped to collect abalone. And then when they tightened things up and regulated it so restricted the licences, a lot of people missed out. Like I know one guy he was a Jamaican guy, used to live out of Eden. He sailed to, or he went to England to buy a yacht and sail it back. But because it took him so long to sail the boat back here, and he wasn't putting returns in, he missed out on his licence. And then there was another guy up at Tilbury there, we used to call him Moon. He was a non-Aboriginal guy, and he broke his leg. And because he broke his leg, he wasn't getting any abalone, and he also missed out on his licence. So a lot of people missed out on licences because of that, and we was fortunate to hang on to our licences. But the problem is, because me and my brother started diving too young, we was only teenagers when we started diving. My brother was diving 2 or 3 years before me. He was at the ripe old age of 11 years old when he was commercial diving for abalone. And what happened with the two of us is we both got the bends. We couldn't put the fish returns in. The government threatened to take our licences off us, which they would have done with a lot of people. And so we was forced to sell. We wasn't able to hold on to those licences until we got better, or even hand them down to our kids. And so we was forced to sell. And so we really got ripped off from that system. The first orca gears we had, I think they used to call them Clisbys, and they had a little petrol motor that had a belt connected to an air compressor. And that had a problem because those air compressors had vegetable oil in them. And so all day you'd be breathing vegetable oil. You could actually feel it and taste it in your mouth. It wasn't very nice. And then later on they developed these air compressors that had synthetic rings. But some of them new ones of the new compressors they developed, sometimes the valves would break in them, and you'd get a real strong taste of burning rubber, and like it was about to poison you. And that's a bit of a problem when you're in deep water, because you just can't pull it out of your mouth, you know what I mean? Yeah, so, and my dad, he trialled the first air compressor that come to Australia from America. It was called a Scuba Boy. It was designed for lakes and rivers, where it floated on the water with a pump-up tube that went around it like a donut. And we used to use that little motor. We used to carry it around the rocks. And we did a lot of our diving was snorkel diving, and a lot of it was later on with air compressors. And in the late 70s, we thought that we'd have to be more competitive, so we started to buy boats and started to use boats to get out in the water, get into places where you couldn't drive, because by driving there it was too much work, it was too much carrying, and you was limited to the places you could go. Yeah. Somewhere along the lines is that Aboriginal people have lost an economic base, because before commercialising of abalone, Aboriginal people have always hunted and gathered from the seas. We've always taken enough for ourselves, but we've always taken extra to trade for other things. So that barter and trade was a form of currency, and Aboriginal people have been taken out that part of that cultural industry. And I think government should look at ways of how do we involve Aboriginal people so that we can get some sort of commercial industry out of abalone. Yep. And that's going to be pretty hard, I guess, but it needs to be looked at, because after the Second World War, the governments of the world signed a peace treaty, and the effects of that peace treaty was that no foreign power shall assume the ownership and control of another race of people without their free and informed consent. And so, without creating problems for commercial divers, we need to come up with a solution that can find the right balance. We've got to take into account the rights of commercial divers, their right to that industry. We have to take into account the rights of the recreational users, so that they can have adequate resource availability. We need to take into account the biodiversity, because of the natural food chain within the oceans and the immortality rate. And then we need to take into account how can Aboriginal people gain some sort of commercial industry involved in the abalone. Whether that's through abalone diving, or whether Aboriginal people are employed as divers and rangers to be a part of the policing and the patrolling of that resource, but how can they earn some sort of income from that resource?